What is up, everybody? CP and SJ with you here for another round of Every Day We're Covering, where we talk the world of sports, wagering, having a good time. We've been on a little bit of a break here. I guess, everybody needs summer break, and we just it was just kind of a natural happening. We decided, hey, this wasn't going to work out a couple of days for various reasons. Had some trips and things going on. Of course, there was the holiday weekend in there as well, so we just put the brakes on it for a few weeks, and now we're getting back in the saddle, ready to roll because we're not that far away from college football, and we know that that's number one priority to talk about here on this show. We will recap a little bit of what's happened since we've been gone with some other sports as well, but mostly some of the major college football headlines that have also popped up while we have not been with you, but getting back into the swing of things and getting you ready now for college football season. SJ, I know you've been out and about gallivanting across the country a little bit too here. You got the battery recharged and ready to hit the fall here?
Yeah, I think so. It's vacations are always fun. It's like depends though what kind of what you do in your mindset. Like this usually you're like, ready for it to be over and get back. This time I was like, man, it's gonna be hard to get back in the groove. So that's kind of my mind here. So maybe those I guess days off was needed there and getting back in the swing, like you said, because before you know it, we'll be back here, and that's good though, because we're not like I said, the World Cup has helped a little bit, at least on my end, to have a little excitement. But other than that, it's like I'm always, ever since I've been past the school age, the dog days of summer as a youth. I'm just like, let's get through as fast as we can and get back to football season because the summer doesn't really entice an adult all that much. At least, I mean, maybe get on the golf course a little bit, but other than that, it's like, it's just another hot day and another sunny day. Nothing that great to look forward to because, unfortunately, we still have to work on those hot days. We don't get we don't get to enjoy it by the pool or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we don't get that traditional summer break, so not soaking up the rays or dipping in the pool to cool off. But luckily, lucky for both of us, we're not outside breaking rocks either and dying of the heat. So I respect to those people that are working in the outdoors because that has to suck this time of year. And you're right. It's so dependent. I love this time of year when you get a good day because it's awesome to be outside and do whatever you want to do. Golfing, fishing, hanging out by the lake, whatever. All those kinds of things are great. But the weather needs to cooperate, and some days it's just not even fun anymore when it gets so damn hot during the peak time of the year, dog days, so to speak. But we've got that kind of going on right now. Definitely in the middle of a heat wave as we record this right now. I know it was hot as hell here today. Tomorrow is supposed to be brutal. Unfortunately, the great bike ride across to Iowa, Ragbri, started today. And those poor bastards tomorrow are going to be trying to chug as much water as humanly possible, I think. It's going to be a pretty rough ride, but they always seem to find a way to manage. So, but that's, weather kind of dictates what goes on this time of year. But we're going to, look forward to having some fun, getting prepped here for college football season. A lot of that talk's starting to ramp up, too, because everybody's getting excited for it. And it seems like you get past that July 4th holiday, and then everybody feels like the summer is on the downslide, and you're looking forward to what's coming up when we get into the school year, so to speak. But since we've been away from you, of course, we have had some things wrap up and come to an end. The New York Knicks are your NBA champions. The Carolina Hurricanes are the champions of the NHL. And as you mentioned, World Cup's been going on. I've been kind of peeking at that here and there. I know I've watched quite a bit of it. My son's kind of interested in the world of soccer. I know you've got one in the family that's very into the soccer world as well, so that maybe piques a little bit more of the interest. Did wrap up today. The final was today out in New Jersey, and Spain comes out on top with a 1-0 win over Argentina, and it denies Mr. Messi his repeat title there. It was, I don't know, it's interesting because it's such a different sport, obviously, for most Americans, and we're not really privy to the strategy of the game, so to speak, and how it's played. And I think it's just so different from a lot of things that we enjoy. So it can be hard, and I can understand how it can be hard for some people to enjoy it. But at the same time, it's still competition. It's still guys that are great athletes getting out there doing the best at the thing that they do. And I found it entertaining. I mean, I think today's game was actually a little bit let down for a while. It just didn't have the action we thought we probably would get out of it for a good chunk of it. It got it better at the end. It's been interesting to see that happening, and of course happening here in our own backyard.
Yeah, I mean, it's the highest level of almost. If you can't find enjoyment, I mean, dang near any sport with the best, the best of the best, then you just kind of either have a closed mind or you're not giving it a chance. So that's the thing. But of course, there's things about the game that are probably aren't you just as you would, watch, the popular sports in America, there's some, kind of just, I guess gamesmanship is like the best way to call it. Like, and then
Hmm.
even before you could kind of like, oh, the flopping sucks, but that's really, that's kind of, kind of eked its way into some of the other sports that we do
Hmm.
like. So you
Yeah.
can't be like, no way, I hate the flopping. I can't watch because of that. Because, I mean, you look at basketball, whatever level, even, I mean, we've even seen people drawing penalties in football where you have to rewind it a few times and laugh at them because exactly they got shot or
Yeah.
something and they're just like,
Yeah.
totally like flop. And I can think of a couple off top of the head just in the last few
Yep.
years. So that part, but it's probably the offense is the hardest thing probably to adapt to, where you don't get a lot of scoring, a lot of goals.
Hmm.
But I mean, you watch these teams playing, like I mean, good luck scoring because even some of the times they do score, it's like, man, that's a take all the players off there and put the ball there and ask any just take a guy off the couch and say try to put that ball into that net with nobody there and you ain't doing it, let
Yeah.
alone with I mean just the angles and the freaking I guess the geometry of it and just the speed of how much they can put on that ball and just hit it in the perfect spot. Hitting it at that kind of a pace too is just so that's kind of the things I guess you could take from it. Just there's still ways to appreciate it, but I mean it's easy for me to say because I mean I've always kind of enjoyed the World Cup at least. I don't necessarily get into much of the MLS or even the European leagues or those type of things, but World Cup is a fun thing, just kind of like the Olympics. It only comes around so
Yeah.
often. Got to do it up right, and I think they did a fairly good job, and especially this was one of the I mean, very few times. I know maybe I recall of more than one country hosting together, kind of type of
Hmm.
thing. And it seems like it kind of went off pretty well. And the time zone thing helped us. Like
Yeah.
it is tough the years when it's somewhere 6 or 7 hours, 8 hours ahead of time, and you're like, do I really want to get up at 4 a.m. or stay up this late and watch it? And if it's not the team you care about, you're probably not going to do it. So I think that benefited as well, just having that the local time zones and not being so not being a factor in things at all.
Yeah. And it's yeah, it brings some new probably eyeballs to the sport here in this part of the world, and probably gain some more interest. I'm sure you're going to have a lot more kids that are interested in participating in the sport because they have seen it. And, always anecdotally that you say that kind of thing, but it's true. It has that effect. So it's yeah, probably a good thing overall. I mean, from what I heard, like you said, I think all the host sites did a pretty good job of, doing their thing and having welcoming in people. I know there were a couple of maybe snafus as far as moving people around early on in the first couple of days, but once they smoothed that out and figured it out, it went pretty well. Obviously, Kansas City had a chance to get itself on the map there with hosting some great games and some great atmospheres with some of the fans that were there participating. So I think overall, yeah, a very good thing for all those cities that participated in the World Cup. I think the one thing about the sport that is so different, if you're a fan of most traditional, popular American sports, like you said, it's there's not as many scoring chances, and then it's such a continuous effort game that you get those moments where you feel like guys aren't really trying out there at moments, but it's the fact that they're running the entire time, so they have to like
Yeah, kind
reserve
of pace
themselves.
yourself,
Yeah.
yeah, a little bit, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and even I mean, and it's a sport too, like similar to like I mean, basketball is about the only thing, except with a few exceptions, where you're playing both sides of the ball too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're not, you're not playing. I'm just, a few plays on offense, and you get a 20-minute break or a 10-minute break of real time, and then you go back out there after you've kind of reset yourself. So yeah, you do definitely have to kind of. There's a lot more strategy I think than probably you would, if you're just looking at it on face value. It's not just go run and kick the ball like this.
Yeah.
I mean, there's very of course everybody knows that, but it's sometimes people just kind of simplify a little too much. And yeah, I think even with the you mentioned this the fans and stuff. Just I watched went to the Fan Fest here in town in Kansas City, and then also was able to watch a few of the games out on the West Coast when we were traveling out there, and it was there was I mean people were into it, so that I guess that's a good thing always. If you want to, I know the U.S. kind of fell short of what they wanted to do. I still think they did better than going in. If someone said if they thought they'd get to the elimination stage, that'd be a success, and then
Yeah.
when it happens, like well because you forget that the expectations were coming in. Of course, they that last game was a disappointment, just how it played out.
Yeah.
But they still, I think, did fairly well. But now that you kind of want to grow the game is where you're looking at too and get better, which seems always to be the discussion. At least you have the I guess the support would be there, and the I guess the want to of the fans, and then the country seems like it's probably as high as it's ever been.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. So, interesting stuff, and yeah, it all has come to a close, and now I guess we move on till the next time it rolls around here in our neck of the woods. But 4 years, they'll do it again in another location, and folks will turn in there. I think that the one thing that does blow my mind, that you hear that like today, there's obviously only so many people that can fit inside a stadium, so there's 80-some thousand there in New Jersey watching the thing, but then you're talking about like billions of people watching this game. It just, that blows my mind. I mean, you think about things like the Super Bowl, and that's probably the next thing that's comparable, and this is light years beyond that. It's just wild.
Yeah, the attention that it gets is, I guess you can't, just kind of hard to wrap your mind around it. I mean, I guess this is good and bad wherever you want to take it, but it is kind of, I mean, I don't even want to say if it's nice, but I'm glad that it was made aware of even though the World Cup is, I think it's a great event and enjoyable, the corruption of FIFA knows no bounds, and I'm glad that more people are finally aware of, with it being here, of kind of how they do business. So I'm not that's going to change anything, but it's like, well, you just wake up yesterday that this isn't exactly on the up and up. I mean, they had they had their one of their last big events in Qatar. Which,
yeah.
I mean, that's not, so like that kind of shows you all you need to know right there. So,
Yeah.
I mean, either way, still, that's kind of a small thing. It's not great. We know whatever. It could be any league. You could probably, dig into any professional league and find that. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just, at least people know and hope they remember it. Put it that way when it comes to like the next events and stuff. And it's not a secret anymore, I guess, if it was at all.
Yeah. They're going to take anybody's money is the idea here. And, yeah, it may not be always, there may be some things going on that you don't think about while you're just watching two teams play. Let's just say that. But certainly has happened over the years. And I guess the more people you get involved and interested in something, that's probably more likely to happen. And that's what's going on there. But yeah, it is good to expose that a little bit. So that's all wrapped up. We're kind of moving on, as I mentioned, into the dog days of summer here. Of course, baseball is still going on, but outside of that, there's really not a whole lot as far as the sports landscape to pay attention to. And that's why the preseason talk gets so heavy now for college football, because I think people just turn to that because everything else is kind of wrapped up, so to speak. Before we get into that, though, we do need to let you know what's powering us through the podcast and wetting our whistle here. I did not forget. We
were so excited about the World Cup.
Yeah.
We had to get that out there.
Yeah.
America's game now is soccer.
Yeah, nobody would have guessed that from me, but it's I just wanted to do a little recap there. Get you wet the whistle a little bit before we talk about what's wetting our whistle. I went and found one, and this is odd because I think not too long ago, one of the pods that we did before we had a little break, I mentioned this brewery, and I hadn't talked about them for, it seemed like, ages. But I went into the store today to look for something different, and stumbled across one from them again that I thought, I got to try this. So interestingly enough, I'm going to talk about the old Dogfish Head Brewery once again, out there in Vermont. And they've got some always interesting stuff. And of course, they have some beers that they relate to certain things. And one of them is I think they've had this collab for a while, or at least something that's like a nod to it. Because they're kind of, if the company, they're maybe a little bit on the hippie side, so to speak. But Grateful Dead is one of their connections, and well, apparently with this beer, because it's got the Grateful Dead logo right on the front of it. But I thought this style caught my eye. I was like, well, I probably like this. They call it the Citrus Daydream Lager, the Grateful Dead Citrus Daydream Lager. And it's a lager brewed with lime, lemongrass, lemon peel, and some form of grain that I can't pronounce. But it's pretty good. It's pretty much what you would think, I guess, by reading the description. Just a kind of a calm lager that's got that nice lemon tart to it. They say that on the can they say that it tastes like a good bright sunshiny morning, and I don't disagree. It's a pretty good little beer. Good for the summertime for sure, and nice and bright and crisp. What do you got going over there, SJ?
Well, I wanted to throw a few at you from my travels, but as
Hmm.
far as what I'm drinking tonight, talk about those dog days and how hot it's been. I've just been on the extra light kick lately, and just
Mm-hmm.
getting something like they're refreshing but not so heavy. So I've mentioned several other beers that they've made, but I hadn't had my hands on this yet, and I saw it one of the stores I was at the other day. But the Zip Light, which is basically like Zip Line in Lincoln, their version of like whatever the Mick Ultra, the Yingling Flight, like the
Mm-hmm.
extra, kind of just really really light beer. And so it's not too bad. I guess we're clocking in, under 100 calories, which is good, I guess, if you're watching that pool. You want to
Mm-hmm.
get your shirt off at the pool. Maybe this is the way to go. But it's you're still over 4%, which is decent. I mean, you're higher than most of your standard, even like your garage beer. So it's pretty standard, just basically it says like a light beer. It's nothing extraordinary, but it's pretty easy drinker. So didn't end up snag that, but uh headed out west for the little road trip there with the family, and came across actually quite a few places. And oddly enough, I was the most one. I mean, I wasn't really worried, but wasn't planning ahead. Sometimes you get on the road and you get down, you're like drive for a number of hours. Like, man, I'm in a cold one when I get to where I'm going. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, the on this day the travels took me. We were stopping in Utah for the night, and of course we're like, oh crap, can
Oh
I
no.
buy beer here? Like, I was you're doing your Googling, looking everywhere, and I found there was like we were staying just kind of near Salt Lake and Ogden, and I guess that must have been an okay place because just in a grocery store or whatever. But I came across Wasatch Brewing is what it's called. It's like
Mm.
an amber ale they made. They're pretty good. I hadn't had that one before. I'd heard of it and it looked familiar, so that was a decent one. And then another one tried was at this on the pier there in San Francisco, down at Pier 39. They have a Fog House restaurant. They just made their in-house lager. That was pretty good. It wasn't anything crazy, like I said, but it was a little bit more. I guess you want to go like the hoppy route. Now I wouldn't say too hoppy, but just being that West Coast style lager. It
Yeah.
wasn't it wasn't like something. It was good, and I could probably had a couple of them, but it wasn't. It's very different than just like drinking like whatever light beer you like here. So
Yeah.
that was a different one. And then probably I guess I'll throw this one in too. They have these all over the place, but I don't know if you're familiar with the Chicky and Pete Sports Bar. It's like mostly
Mm.
in casinos. Like Bally's has their affiliation with them, but the place that stayed in Reno, the Grand Sierra Resort, they had one in house there, and they made a house lager too. That wasn't bad, so
Nice.
I'll give them a little bit of a shout. It wasn't anything, nothing out of the ordinary, but it was just I don't know. I guess I was thinking of like, oh man, this was a nice way to end the day. But definitely top choice there on the travels was Figueroa Brewing Company, and then we went to the Westlake Village location, which is kind of like I guess like kind of the west side of LA, like by the Calabasas area. If you're familiar with
Okay.
that, like there's a definitely not my type of what do you call it? Not my tax bracket, but I end up getting a decent priced hotel room there nonetheless. So I wouldn't be looking for any type of real estate there, that's for
Yeah.
sure. But definitely a nice area. But there I did end up going like the flight route and snagged their they had a blonde ale, got the Mexican lager, a pilsner, and then also the California IPA, which I don't know how many times every time almost we talk about the IPAs, that's just not my thing. But that one, that was pretty money, and it was like 7% I think on
Mm.
the ABV. So and
Good
that
stuff.
blonde ale I mentioned was like almost seven, like 6.8, which to me
Wow.
for a blonde it was good and it was smooth, but I wouldn't have thought that just drinking one. So that's probably one you got to keep your eye on. But that was probably the top. So if you ever get out to LA area, I know they have them all over the place, but Figueroa Brewing Company, real good beer.
Nice. Nice. Very cool. Yeah, that's always fun when you get out and you get a chance to,
Difference, yeah.
yeah, grab a couple
I,
of things you don't see most of the time.
yeah, the challenge is just I guess picking them sometimes is
Yeah.
hard to think. Like, because I mean, basically, I'm just like when I'm out of town, it's like I'm never gonna buy anything that I can get where I can get at home. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's interesting with the blonde because there's a brewery. It's actually it doesn't exist on its own anymore. But there's other breweries that have bought the rights to kind of like brew their beer still. There's out of Pella, Iowa, called Peace Tree Brewing, and they had one called Blonde Fatale that was a blonde ale, but it was like a strong blonde. So like this thing is like 12%. It's like holy shit. Like don't need many of these to put you on your ass. I did have that experience here recently too. Somebody brought one of those. I think it's the I can't remember. Yeah, I think it's Goose Island who has the beer hug line. And there's one, guy brought one to start the day, and it was like 9%, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, I mean that's gonna get me a little bit, and then I have it, and then you start drinking your other beers, and as the day goes on, you're kind of like, damn, that I think that kind of just was not the way to start, but well, you gotta be careful, read those labels anymore because you just never know.
There's one way to wake up.
Yeah, what's coming at you. Sometimes it just hits you different. I don't know what it is. All right, so that's what we're sipping on, and some recommendations there for you. Maybe that'll give you folks something to track down on your voyages here down the road. Let's get into some talk here about football. We are almost, darn near getting to a month away here from college football. Hard to believe. I don't believe that, but 41 days officially. I just did the count before we got on here until that UNC TCU Dublin, Ireland game at Aviva Stadium. So we're ready to rock with that again. And then, of course, the next week is when everybody else will get rocking and rolling there in early September. And that's just 48 days away. So we're not that far on the calendar away from this stuff. There's been lots of talk about some, physical changes to rules. Some things that have happened within conferences. And of course, as we left you, one of the things that was hot and heavy in the news and then kind of worked itself out. And I'm almost kind of glad that we didn't have the show for a couple of weeks because things changed so fast, and it turned into this absolute joke of a story, really. But the whole Brendan Sorsby's thing there at Texas Tech kind of worked itself out, I guess, so to speak, because the basically Tech got brash enough that they were just saying that, hey, if you assholes don't want to let this guy play, we're going to sue you because, we believe this is against the bylaws and all that. And so then the Big 12 turned around and was like, oh, yeah, well, I think you're violating the bylaws, so we're just go ahead and sue you right back. And once that happened, Tech's tune changed real fast. The announcement came fairly quickly after that Sorsby was going to kind of voluntarily depart the program. He was not going to pursue eligibility any longer, and he was going to try to enter the supplemental draft for the NFL. So that it's just kind of like, well, that's what we thought may work out from this, and this would be fair for everybody. Of course, there were a number of schools around the country that started to say, well, if they're going to do this, we're not going to play them, kind of thing. So I think that the minute that happened, they were just kind of like, yeah, this this isn't going to end well for us. So we better step out of the fire here for a minute. Of course, then as it turns out, the NFL decides to say, well, you've kind of been a naughty boy. We really don't have to have a supplemental draft. We don't feel like it, so we're not going to. So now, for him, unfortunately, he's just got to sit out and work on his craft and wait for the draft next year come around, which, hell, we're almost to the point where some of these kids are thinking about doing that anyways. So whatever. I mean, for him, it's a big deal. And I'm sure, for him as a person, it's a good thing. You get to step away from all the limelight and the bull crap and just kind of focus on yourself, fix the bad habits that you've obviously had in your past, work on your craft, and you're still going to have a good shot to, maybe latch onto a team the next time around. So, but certainly a saga that, we didn't see all the twists and turns of this story as it started, I don't think.
No, and it probably worked. I mean, at least from my perspective, worked out the best case scenario. It's not like we're gonna have to talk about this all year because you would have if it means every time something happens. And that's one thing I'm a little bit was curious of even moving forward. People have done, I guess, at least legally and maybe morally done like worse things, if you want to label it as that. But at the same time, it's maybe you broke a law and then you served your penance, whether it be like jail time or probation or a fine or something. And then it's like, well, that's kind of, the point of that. You kind of pay your, pay what you're due. And then we kind of, you, in theory, you forgive don't forget about what they did, but like, okay, now they move forward and try to be a better person from that. And this is a little different because it's like, technically it's not illegal by like law of the land, like state law or federal law, but by your, contract you signed as a scholarship, it's breaking those laws by far. So, typically you like fans and people forget. Time goes on, you move on, you forget like, oh, this guy, stole this or whatever, or he broke this law, like, and then you're like, well, he paid his debt to society, moved on, he's a different guy now. But with Sorsby, if it ends up moving forward and he plays again, every time you turn on the game and maybe he's on whatever team, even if it's ends up being UFL or CFL, or if he doesn't make the NFL, or maybe he does, but then you see the DraftKings commercial through every commercial break, like, oh yeah, that's the guy that was gambling. This one of to me, I'm curious if like, is this one of those things that goes away because it's such a prevalent thing. Sports and betting it's always been kind of hand in hand, but now it's not like, hey, come here, I got to tell you something, like whisper it to you.
Yeah.
Now it's just like every freaking, you walk into any freaking facility of whether it be a sports bar or actual stadium, let alone like watching it on TV. And that's all it is. It used to be, Bud, they might have more commercials than, Bud Light now.
Yeah. No, that's not, yeah, that's not false. And that was, there was a time in our society where that was always frowned upon. Like, should we be advertising alcohol and especially when it came to the college game? Of course, we know that's gone out the window now because everybody's selling beer at the stadium. So, it just times change, perception changes. It's obviously, at this point, it's obviously becoming more accepted that it's a thing, that people do it. You're making money off of it. Anytime anybody can make money, they're going to latch on to that thing. And if it helps their cause, then so be it. And I think that, a lot of the college leadership, whether they liked it or not, they realized that this is something we probably need to do just financially. You got to get on board with it because it's there whether we interact with it or not. We might as well benefit from it. So
there's not. I don't know if there's any. Maybe you could count a couple, but there's not really any school in this kind of setup way it is, and where the finances are coming and going. You're not really in any type of position to just like let money. We don't. We're too good to do that. Like you're not really if you want to be competitive and kind of be in that place where you have an opportunity to compete with everybody else, you kind of have to find whatever revenue streams you can.
And obviously at the end of the day, I don't think anybody's still like, I think we're all still in agreement of, the way that players themselves should conduct themselves.
Yeah.
Like you have to stay away from that with your own league and your own team for sure. That's been unspoken forever since gambling was around, even before it was legalized. So, and this is such a different, because I think everybody wants to like kind of point to like the whole Pete Rose thing as being like a, comparison thing. And it's just like, this is so different from that it's not even funny. Like this kid hasn't even achieved anything, honestly. Like, he had a couple good, decent seasons in college football. It's not like he won national titles and whatever,
Yeah, that was a big question I had, just being like when they were kind of just standing their ground with text. I was like, is it really worth this? Like to kind of not that they've ever had like they've never done anything like as far as like out there as a university being like any type of like criminal or nothing where you're like, oh man, these guys are bad people, but they've never been thought of as like, oh, these are like like the best of the best type of institution, just because it's it's like the third or fourth school you think of in that state. So nothing against them, it's just that's just where they are. But I was always just as this played out and they just keep putting out these videos they were doing and all this kind of grandstanding is basically the way I kind of frame it as. We don't even, how good of a player is it when it comes down to it, it's probably like nobody's probably good enough to kind of tarnish your university's image. But if you're willing to do it, it's like you better hope the payoff's worth what you're kind of, that was just the thought. I was just like, is it a situation where it's like, if you're going to stand by him, you better be at least, if not, in the playoff, and then probably making a run there if you're going to kind of, hit yourself to this guy and your future in the, status, I guess, if your university as a cultural powerhouse, it better work out, because to me, it didn't seem like he was that type of player that was going to kind of take him over from what they were last year to kind of get him over to the next level.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, like you said, I guess evaluating that, I think it just got to the point where they probably realized that finally, like, this is getting out of control. This is going to do more harm to us than it can do any good at this point, especially when teams are threatening to not play you and maybe ever again kind of thing. It's interesting because it sparked a whole new can of worms within the league. Really, I mean, a little bit because they were obviously standing their ground. The league and of course the other teams don't. They don't agree with it, so they're not going to get on board. Why the hell would we support you just because you're in our conference if you got some bullshit idea? And I think a lot of them were very forthright about that from the get-go, so it got, contentious and heated. And then just come media days were, I think, 2 weeks ago. So they went down, and one of the opening questions, from when Yormark is up there on the stage is from this guy from Texas Tech who's whining about, like, well, you took our tortilla thing away from us, and then you let Oklahoma State continue to have their paddles that make noise that's supposed to be against the rules. And then, you didn't stand up for us. And, when it came to this situation, what makes you think, or why should Texas Tech feel like you're behind them or support them? And I mean, Yormark, I think he did what he could do, just to kind of ignored the question. Basically, he just kind of threw it back at him, and it's like, I'm excited about what we're doing going forward. Basically, is what he said, and walked away. But it's just the thing that I thought was funny is I saw, of course, there's you get it to the internet and then it just goes wild. But there was a lot of internet Twitter chatter between the fan bases going on, and a lot of people were starting to say, like, man, it's amazing how quickly this fan base became Texas when they were one of them that wanted to get rid of Texas. And now we're doing the same type of shit that they were doing before, crying because we didn't get our way. And I just think people get lost in themselves sometimes in what they love and what they appreciate. And I think, that just the little things, sometimes you have to evaluate for what it is. Like even the stupid tortilla thing, like it's a problem because it's like a physical thing that delays the contest. People paddling a thing against the wall doesn't delay the contest. Like, this is different. You have to evaluate the things for what they are. And that's why they said you can't do that anymore. Because it's just an issue to take care of it, and get it out of the way before we can play a friggin' football game. So, I don't know. It's obviously there's a little bit of that contention there, and I think that's going to hang around for a while, especially this season for sure. We'll see what kind of chance we get from student sections along the way. But at some point too, you got to realize that, we're lucky to be part of a league that's still viable and still making money. And, if we're just going to keep bitching and crying, and, you may end up in a spot that you don't want to be ultimately. So I think it just raised a lot of that weird animosity that doesn't need to be there. But, when you run into these situations and you're going to make those kind of choices, it's going to happen.
It's mostly like a self-inflicted thing, so I don't understand what they want the conference to do for them. As far as maybe them being mad about that, they're just always going to be mad because it was probably a tradition, but maybe they could have found something else to do instead of that if you really were thinking outside the box and really were the innovators that they think they are, and they could have come up with something else to still keep it going. Because I mean, it's just a matter of like, I don't think whatever it is, nobody's allowed to throw anything on the field, even if it's not like with you're not doing it with like freaking with ill will or anything. You're just not. I mean, just you're not allowed to throw stuff on the field. It's just part of the that's part of sports. So I mean, I don't even know who this guy was. I mean, I saw the thing you're talking about, but I think it's kind of just like one of those like YouTube blogger type guys. Like that's when these media days. That the bad thing is they don't have much media at them anymore because the people that are like legitimately like trying to do like a job, it's like, well, it's not really worth their time, or they just don't see it as worthwhile, but an investment. I'm sure there's still some people there, but it kind of all turns into Radio Row at the Super Bowl anymore with these kind of asinine questions. So the guy was probably just trying to get his little bit of thing that check drive some traffic to his website and all that, and then that was kind of the whole point of what you could tell. But I mean, I don't know where you think people are going to be like, oh yeah, you guys are right, we're with you. You're getting screwed, because that's not the case.
Yeah, no. So that yeah, we'll see how the reaction goes throughout the season between the schools. But I think ultimately once we get on the field and games start being played, and that'll kind of die down and be forgotten about again. And
We hope,
obviously
at least.
we hope, yeah,
Yeah,
we hope.
that's
And obviously, like you said, a lot of this has been brought on upon themselves, and a lot of it too is just the way that Tech has approached this era. And I mean, credit to them. They found somebody that was willing to kind of take the flag and run away with, we're going to pump a bunch of money into finding players and taking advantage of this situation and trying to put ourselves in the best position to, be a contender. And that's all fine. I mean, it is what it is. Nobody's stopping you right now, so do it. I think eventually a lot of this is starting to come back to the mean, as we've talked about before. Of the it's not going to be this wild forever. It just can't be. But once that's over, I guess to me you got to be a little bit careful too, because you can't necessarily just go burning every bridge down you ever had competitively with anybody, and then when it comes to the end of the day, and now there's these guidelines again, and you have to follow them, and it's more of a an even, so to speak, playing field, then you might want to be able to get along with the people that are still around you. So we'll see if Tech's willing to do that.
Yeah, maybe you don't like it, but I don't think most people are saying like, oh, you spend all this money and cheating and anything. Like, that's just, you're able to do that these days, so no one's really, I guess, so mad about that. But yeah, it's not the best idea to kind of put yourself on an island when, even though there's the few conferences that feel like they're as stable as you can be, who knows what's going to happen
Yeah,
in a few years down the road where you might need a few allies at least.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing that I guess we'll stay in that league, because this is another interesting thing that came up, and we know we're going to see this in a lot of different conferences, in a lot of different schools. We're starting to see it now in the schools on the individual front. But one of the things that was announced at Big 12 Media Days was that the conferences had kind of struck a partnership with Monster Energy, where they're going to be, so to speak, the presenting sponsor of the regular season for the Big 12. The Big 12 has like dedicated space on every field for the logo, and they're going to incorporate something with the Monster logo with that this year on the fields for all the schools, which ruffled some feathers, and I guess I understand that to an extent. And then there's also going to be a patch on the logo patch that's on the jerseys will be altered a little bit. It doesn't sound like, I think people got carried away with this at the beginning because they were like, everybody's mind immediately went to like, whatever movie you've ever seen where there's like a ridiculous gigantic logo on something, and it just looks asinine. I don't think that's going to be the case here. This is going to be a very subtle, more subtle type of thing. The deal wasn't very lucrative, and I think that's what a lot of people were starting to, bitch and complain about and make fun of Yormark for, I guess. But I don't know. I think there is some nuance to this, because I don't think it's going to be as obnoxiously prominent as people initially thought it was going to be. B, to me, it's money that didn't exist before. I mean, I don't. Yeah, should it probably be more? I'm not smart enough to tell you what a deal should be on those fronts. I have never been involved in any sort of big marketing deal, so it makes sense that it probably should have been more money, but whatever. I also think that there's a play here too by Yormark to get them kind of invested in some other things, and I think that's coming. I think it's going to be much more of a prominent connection to the championship games, because that's not part of this initial deal in the first place. And then it sounds like there's going to be some more kind of like collaborative marketing type stuff down the road that is going to be more money invested in. So who knows? We'll see if that comes to fruition. I can understand if you are in that world and you think it is a bad business deal. Yeah, okay, fine, you can make that argument. But the fact of it just being a thing, I'm not surprised, because we knew that this was coming. It's going to happen a lot of places. We've had a handful of schools now that have come out and announced their own personal deals with some sort of a patch that's going to be on jerseys and a court sponsorship logo type thing. When we knew we were giving money to kids for whatever, you knew that there was going to be a way to find more sponsorship dollars in some fashion, and I think that's just the iteration of what we're getting here.
I mean, I don't think it's that honestly big of a deal when it comes to like having a patch or whatever. You go to stadiums and see all this how much signage is up and all, but that's not a big deal. I do think it was a little bit on the short end for the fact of it's not just a football deal. It's a
Yeah, yeah.
multiple sport deal. That's why I'm like, what the hell? So hopefully, I mean, you would think if you're one of the schools that or a fan of one of the schools that there's something else coming in addition to that.
Hmm.
Just because I mean, with that amount of money, as expensive as everything is, and just travel and stuff like that, doesn't really go very far with what every school's getting. So that would be the thing. Because I think they probably could have got more, but like you said, there's probably you would assume that there's more coming in, and not like in a bad way. But I mean, wasn't there? I don't know if it fell apart or it's still a thing, but Big 12 had like a partnership with WWE or something of that sort at one point,
Hmm.
as far as, and then also there, I don't know if this is still going to be a thing, but they're planning on playing like international games in some sports too, like in Mexico
Yep.
City and other. So it's kind of the way the does business as far as like the big big ideas type of thing.
Hmm.
So it's not. I don't think it's necessarily. I'm thinking would expect any teams, even Big Ten, SEC to be doing some type of patchwork before the season starts. I'm almost like pretty sure that's going to happen. It's just a matter of when they announce it.
Yeah.
Like I don't even think that's a big deal, and you won't even notice it. People just like there's certain things I just get so uptight about when it comes to like sports. It's like don't change this, or I mean even just as with Nebraska and following them, it's like they made like a very small tweak to their uniform this year, and it's not even like a couple stripes here or there. It's like it was like what like who? I mean, the only
Yeah.
thing I was mad about is like I wish they would have went old school gray face mask and just did it all like because there's kind of like it was almost like a throwback but a new version of it as like
Okay.
their standard uniform. That's what they're kind of doing. Like I don't like a big deal to me, but some people just get really like caught up in
All
some
worked
certain
up.
things
Yeah.
are okay to change, certain things are even with you mentioned the alcohol sales before. Some places are just like up in arms when they start selling booze or they can't do it or whatever. But you know then they're like chugging 10 beers before they get in the stadium, but they're
Yeah.
like, we can't sell it here. Like you pretty much just freaking, you kind of doing your part there to support that business, maybe just in a different way. So
Hmm.
I guess if you're concerned about your schools, spend the $10, $12 beers and let it go back to the university instead of going to the Quickie Mart and buying, the $12, six pack or whatever. So,
Yep.
but yeah, I mean, to me, these things are more interesting to me. I just was surprised about the amount. That was the only thing that
Yeah.
caught me off guard. But then maybe, though, like you said, there might be something bigger in the works down the road, or, maybe they felt like Monster, that's a pretty, good sized company there, and they got some money in their bank account. So maybe they, want the Big 12 to show them something on their end before they really commit to the
Yeah.
bigger amounts. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And that could be true too. And I don't know. To me, from the other end of the marketing standpoint, when Yormark's like thinking about this too, like it's obviously a volatile world of who feels like they belong or who feels validated. Maybe at the same time he felt like, well, I've got a big enough brand on board to like want to be a part of this. Maybe that also shows some validation for us. That gives us a little bit of credibility that this is something that type of brand wants to be a part of too. Now, yes, you should be rightly compensated for that for sure, and you could be very right. And most people, I'm sure it is. From what I saw, like, yeah, I thought the same thing. I was like, well, why the hell are we getting more money out of this? But yeah, I feel like there's maybe a longer play here, or it could just be a bad deal. It is what it is. Nobody's doing anything about it, so they all had to agree. That's the thing.
Right.
Like, there was a couple of schools too. Of course, everybody's like, well, why would you do that to a school like BYU? They can't have caffeine. Like all this thing. Like, everybody had to agree. They sat at a table and talked about it before they announced it. So I'm
Well,
sure
I'm
they.
pretty sure they sell whatever kind of sodas or there's coffee available in Salt Lake City. I know that for a fact because I was just there.
Yeah.
Like he does this. I don't think every single person in that area is
Mhm.
anti that or whatever. So yeah, I mean that was like an easy joke to make. Yeah, but it's I don't know. I think they still want to. Like, they still use those greenbacks whether they drink caffeine or not.
Exactly. So interesting wrinkle. And like you said, there have been a number of schools. I'm not going to go through the whole list or whatever, but that have made their own personal announcements because that is also allowed to have it on whatever side of the jersey for your own deal that you may make. I know Kansas, Texas Tech, a couple of the schools that have made that announcement. already. I think BYU was one of them too. So, and that's going to grow. We'll hear that from lots of places. I immediately saw some people too, from some of those. Well, the one league, of course, that always thinks that they're better than anybody else. They were like, "Oh, they'd never do that. They would never do something like that and disrespect their brand." Bullshit, they would not.
Wait till Bucky shows up on the ass of your pants or something like that. Like, I mean, I'm always curious too. It's like, are we gonna? Is another comment's gonna be like, okay, we're going Red Bull?
Yeah, exactly. We need some wars
going,
here.
Celsius. And is this gonna be like the energy drink battle here, or are we gonna go totally different route? And that would be my thing. If I was that, I guess that'd be not tons of marketing experience, but a little bit. But I'd be, if I was the marketing or whatever comments, I'd be going and say, well, the Big 12's monster. We can do you one better, and go in the Red Bull's office and kind of use that as some leverage maybe.
Yep. Yeah. You want to get out of your F1 sponsorship and get right into the old football. I mean, hell, maybe that's the solution for the whole thing in general. We'll just have conferences that are based off of energy drinks across the country. We'll solve this whole thing right now. But yeah, it's coming for everybody. It is what it is. I think, and there's plenty of people going to make fun of it, and that's fine. I whatever. If you just think poor man's league, whatever. I mean, I think that. One thing that I think Yormark has realized from the get-go is like he's got to do what he can to make his league stand out and be attractive, whatever he has to do about it. And I appreciate that it's been more proactive than reactive. Whether or not it's the right thing to do and it's all going to work out and be great, who knows? The jury's still out and all that, but I'd rather you try than just sit around and wait for things to go sour. So I think it's the right approach.
I mean, it could be, Dan Beebe. So,
yeah.
So that's, at least it looks like you're trying to do something on the other side. And maybe you just don't, because it's not as visible or whatever. And it's maybe doesn't, I guess, like I said, some people are just like really tied to like a uniform. But I mean, if you go to it doesn't even have to be college football, but we're talking about that. But, go to NFL game, MLB, whatever, soccer, hockey, anything. It's like, every time they look at the, let's draw your attention to midfield or whatever, and they're doing some announcement like this is brought to you by whatever damn local, whatever company, or this is the, we got the, whatever you want. I'll just pick a company. The Bud Light hits of the game. Here's the freaking, Tractor Supply Company fan of the day. Like, what do you think that is? That's the same thing as putting a patch. It's all sponsored.
Yep.
Like nothing is just. Nothing is just this is the dance cam for the fun of it.
Yeah.
It's a way to give advertising to people that are going to give you money.
Yeah, I agree. That I think that's why it's so funny. It's just because it's a sport where it hasn't happened before. Like, we're just going to ignore the fact that it happens at everything else. Like,
yeah,
I mean, fucking you watch a NASCAR race and they got 8,000 sponsorships on the car. Like,
I've obviously never been like I've been like. No, know the guys that well, but still, it's you turn it on. It's like I don't even know how you know who is who. I mean, I know there's a number, but it's like to find who the number is. You're like, you got to weed through about 17 different freaking advertisements. Mm-hmm. So, and then even just like the way it's presented, you got all these graphics on the side and all that stuff, and even with like the games that don't stop, like soccer. With, I mean, I didn't care for those hydration breaks, but whatever, it is what it is, because that's not really how that's not their. It just moves. That's one advantage they do have of compared to no offense. Well, the game doesn't usually stop except for maybe a foul here or there. But when they would do like used to do like a split screen, even something. Yep. I mean that's your ad right there. That's your patch, that your sponsorship. So I mean, again, I think the money was low, but also I don't know the whole deal and what it is, and then also it's just not that big of a deal really. I guess that's where I came out on it. Like to me, it's more interesting than anything. I was like, okay, that's a pretty big company. So what is everybody else going to do next or whatever? Mm-hmm. That's where I was kind of thinking about it.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that I saw come up here recently, because one thing that we always like to talk about this time of year as we prepare for the next one is like, well, what went sour with the last season, or what do we need to fix? And the ACC had an interesting scenario last year with their championship game for football, where a 5-loss Duke team ended up getting to the title game. Miami did not play in the championship game, and lo and behold, they get into the CFP and they go to the national championship. So just the way it worked out. Well, the ACC is making changes to their qualification for the championship game now to try to avoid that scenario from happening once again. I was briefly reading through it, and basically what it boils down to is it says, like obviously head-to-head is going to matter most. That'll be the number one decider. And then, of course, comparative, like scheduling, whatever, will also boil into it. But then they had a vague paragraph thrown in there where it was like, what we determined to be the most qualified team for, like, it's basically just like a get out of jail free card for the conference. And we can just say, we think these guys should play.
Sorry. Last year it just said, sorry, Duke. And then we move on.
Yeah. Basically.
Yeah. I mean, you understandable as you want your best teams in there, but that is the issue with the bigger conferences and just not being able to play everybody in your same conference. It's sometimes and maybe this year you have two clear cut teams that are, the two best records and no type, but there is going to be a year here and there where this is going to come into play. Not necessarily like you just pick the team you want to be in there, but as far as whether there's going to be an issue of 3, maybe even 4 teams that are kind of along the same success rate for the season, and you're like, how do you kind of figure this out? So, but even, I mean, I'm sure Miami would be like, we're good with it. We were fine with it.
Yeah, it worked out.
Because not only did you get a week of rest, you end up having a pretty good end to your season and almost, brought home the whole enchilada there. So,
yeah,
it's that I think that was like the first thing that most people feel, and whether it's true or not, I do think teams are okay with not playing that conference championship game because now it doesn't do much for you except maybe get an injury or you end up losing.
Yeah.
And then it could screw you over more than anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and as we've talked, when we're talking about how this thing's going to expand for the CFP anyways, it may become a moot point because it might not even be a thing anymore, or might be part of the thing. Who knows how that's going to work out. But yeah, I mean, I can see what the conference is doing. Of course, Duke, on the other hand, has been, whining and complaining that, like, hey, we did what we were supposed to and you didn't let us into the CFP thing. And I get that, too. Like, it's not their fault. That was the hand they were dealt, and they won the game. So, I don't know. Interesting. The other thing that I've found interesting in the little stories that I've seen here, because, of course, most of the talk is usually, like, the prognostication and the, like, how are these players doing kind of stuff that we start to see this time of year. And it seemed like every single headline I read was, this quarterback is going to be so great this year. He's finally found his proper home. And of course, part of this is we don't know who plays for everybody every year. We got to do some deep dive research because everybody's transferred. But I saw that with Darian Mensah, who left Duke to go to Miami. I saw that with kid for Virginia, the kid at NC State. They're pushing.
Indiana's got a new quarterback again too.
Yeah, yeah. So
I mean, you could just go down the list, and it could be true, might not be, but I guess it's just one of those things where it's like you almost have to just be like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the worst thing to be like. There's just too many variables, and they probably are. Maybe they're on a better team and they're a good player, but it doesn't mean that it's always going to kind of line up and equal success. So
yeah, until it happens,
it's almost like previews of maybe just we don't have any use for them anymore.
Yeah,
When it comes to and it's always kind of, which before anybody that kind of worked in the world is like, well, you just got to get something out there. It kind of was help to like, well, the season hasn't started yet, but we still got to you got to print papers, or we got to put a magazine out, or we got to get something on the website. So let's do a season preview, and you could probably have a better chance of being somewhat accurate, a decade or so ago, because you did know a little bit more and the variables are a little bit less. Like you didn't have not only transfers, but just there's even with like coaching changes, there's a little bit more stability. It seemed like with even just up and down the different levels of the game. But now it seems like it's hard to, even teams you follow, it's hard to keep up with who's on the roster, let alone a team that you might just sneak a peek of a game or two and try to know what's going on because you enjoy the games or you want to watch it. But It's like, oh yeah, he's playing for him. Oh yeah, he's not there anymore, and it's like, oh, you forgot who's playing for who. So, I mean, of course, they're still going to come out and they're going to, it's there's enough people that have kind of made their livelihood on the preview magazines and being like that's their kind of sweet spot there. But as far as accuracy, it's going to be very difficult even now, as it continues to go that way of knowing like exactly what you're going to, because just because this player was that good here doesn't mean he's going to be that good here. And there's a coaching change. They're adjusting and adapting at the same time. A whole new team has. I mean, some of these coaches now, it's like they, one or two have done it and brought their rosters and it's worked, but doesn't mean everybody can do it.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess I also get the other side of like, obviously the school is going to like just tell you everything's great. And that's part of the fun of the college football offseason too, is the fact that we can like have all this hope and, it's a new year and things can be great. Nobody's lost yet. So everybody's feeling good about the probability of what can happen. And that's part of what makes college football great. I get that too. But at the same time, like, just don't go over the top with your, and feed me the bullshit lines of like, oh, he finally feels like he's home. Oh yeah, okay. How many of these guys that story was written about is going to be the same exact story when they go somewhere else the next season, because they're not going to stay there. So it's just don't feed me the I finally found my place kind of thing, because I just don't think that's a thing anymore. But it may be for a few kids, but for overall, if the Dollar Tree comes calling, they're gonna walk on over to it.
Don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Exactly. And along those lines, I will have to say, I guess what would you expect him to say? But I did appreciate at Big 12 Media Days, Jimmy Rogers, who's a new coach for Iowa State. With people asked him, of course, like, well, what's your expectations? Like, should you just, feel good about, winning a couple games or whatever, because it's such a big change in team. And his answer was like, he's like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like this is pretty much like the NFL now, isn't it? Everybody's getting their kids every year. He's like, is that an excuse? Like, we got our team, we're going to make our team, and we're going to be as good as we make it. So he was just kind of like, I'm not going to use that as an excuse. It is what it is. He's like, he had to do it last year, so he's going to do it again. And I get that. Not that it shouldn't be perceived as hard and difficult, because it truly is. But that's the reality that a lot of teams are living with now these days when these things happen. So pretty interesting when you have those kinds of big turnovers, for sure. The other thing I was going to mention too along those lines, and I wanted to bring this up not because, partly because it's a team I follow, but I think it also is an interesting connection to how things are going. I brought it up recently with some of the comments that Jamie Pollard, the AD at Iowa State, had made. You had the whole like, if the other conferences want to do other things, go ahead and do it. What are you waiting and talking about it for? And I think the writing was kind of on the wall ahead of time because of him saying things like that. But now I understand because he did announce that he is retiring. He's kind of, I think for a lot of guys, I think this is going to happen for a lot of different guys. It's that time. Times are changing. Things are going to be very different. It's a very different job from what it was before. You're dealing with a lot of things that you may not necessarily agree with, and sometimes when you've been doing it for a long time, doing anything, it's hard to change. It's hard to adapt. I get that. So I think he felt like, maybe this was just the time for the tea leaves are telling me that I should go do something else and not do this anymore. He's been pretty vocal about what he agrees and disagrees with as far as some of the NIL stuff and the conference alignment stuff. I don't think that's going to change now for the next year while he's transitioning. He says he's going to stay on until the middle of next year or until they find someone else. So I think they're just going to kind of make it an active search in the meantime. And then, if he needs to leave sooner, he will. But it's interesting because you have some of these guys, and he's definitely one of them. Like he's been a polarizing character as far as the fan base is concerned, because he certainly has done some really great things, and he's hired some really great coaches along the way that have turned programs around that were not good at all at Iowa State, and made them something that, is respectable at this point. Finances got extremely better. The facilities got way better under his tenure. Guy did a lot of good things. Now, the last couple of years, fans have been upset about some of the things that he's been, reluctant to change to. Like the whole alcohol sales thing. Well, now they've announced the next year they are going to sell alcohol at Jack Trice Stadium, and I think that's also part of it. He's, I'm leaving. Okay, fine, you can do this now. I don't care anymore. And then the NIL stuff. I don't know that if it sounded like that he necessarily wasn't on the same page as some of the coaches, the major sports with like football and basketball, as far as what we should spend or who gets what. And that was kind of a fight a little bit. And then working with the collective, so to speak, and making that all work was kind of not the easiest thing to have happen. But I guess at the end of the day, for myself, yeah, there's been things I personally have disagreed with him on, and there's been plenty that I'm very grateful for that he did and elevated the program. So, sometimes, and I think sometimes too, we want to make it that it was one or the other. We want to make it that this guy was a failure, this guy was a great success. It can be a little bit of both. And I think he did a lot of great things to elevate Iowa State. And I guess I felt like this about the football coaches over the years too. Like, this guy did what he could do. The next guy took it to another level. Next guy took it to another level. And that's kind of where I see this. Hopefully they find the next guy that takes it to the next level, and he adapts to this new era. But I think you're going to see a lot of these guys around the country that maybe are in his age range or tenure range. They're going to do the same thing. It's time. It's time to move on and for things to be different and somebody else to have a new perspective, because a lot of the stuff around them has changed, and I think we'll see that.
Even though being as like prominent as it is like a title or whatever, being like a big thing, it's and not anybody's fault or it's wherever you're interested, but it's like, man, you really got to be a politician in that type of job, because it's it sounds cool and like athletic director, but you're not really dealing with athletics very much. I mean, you are, but you're doing all the, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but like the behind the scenes backdoor dealings with the boosters or whatever agreements you have in place and all that stuff. So that would be unappealing as far, but being the head of an athletic department, that's definitely be like it'd be a hell of a title to hold in whatever school you're at. But yeah, I could see, like, especially not necessarily like just because of the, time and everything, but somebody who like has been there as long as he has. Cause I knew he'd been around for a while, but I would over 20 years, right? 20 plus years. So, I mean, to hold that position at a university, whatever, especially at a, with Power 4 school, and then that long is kind of an accomplishment of itself. So, it's not that surprising to move on, just because not even the change, but just like that's a career in itself right there, no matter whatever you did before or after. Mm-hmm. So I could imagine some probably, like we said, more the last comment we talked about was kind of maybe like I'm gonna call it like a more honest or off the cuff type of thing. So you see more of that, and like I guess you can't really do it just because, like I said, like the politicking side of it, but. Man, that is a little bit refreshing to me when you get the honesty, because there's a lot of things I think some of these, I guess, what do you want to call them? I guess I kind of think of them as executives, but I guess, school officials, whatever you want to term. But there's probably a lot of things they would like to do that they can't do or just not allowed to do or not in a situation to do. And the fans like, why don't you do this? I was like, well, I tried, or I want to do this. And just if you knew what all goes into it, it's not really a possibility.
Yeah.
Or even even an option.
Yeah. Well, and I think sometimes too, we don't realize, that what kind of say presidents and chancellors and all these other boards and all that kind of stuff have to say on a lot of the things that they want to do. It can't always be what your idea and then there you run with it. There's got to get a lot of people on board sometimes, and it's even different. Like here in the state of Iowa, because there is a board of regents that control those state universities, and you have to pass big projects by them too. So there's a lot to it, and sometimes I don't think people see the forest for the trees, so to speak. But It's I do think you're going to see a lot of that change around the country with some different guys that maybe have held those positions for longer times, just because it's time for that fresh face, that fresh perspective, and deal with this new era of the way things are.
Well, you never know. Might end up at Michigan. I heard they have an opening.
Oh yeah, what a deal that is! Oh my god,
that'd be a situation to walk into, wouldn't it? I mean, I know there's like a lot of money there, and also a big alumni base. But man, they've had some serious issues, and they've kind of skirted by where, and maybe that's part of, like we talked about the Texas Tech, and they're just kind of keeping your mouth shut sometimes does go a long ways, because I mean, I know kind of made jokes of the whatever happened when Harbaugh was there and stuff, but even just the latest thing, it's like they've had some pretty serious issues happening, and just like kind of forget about what or just don't really know what went on there, and they're just end up pulling a football or basketball title out of their rear end or whatever, and they went with Harbaugh when he was there. And they're just kind of skirting the rules wherever they can and getting away with it.
Yeah, keep moving on. They just act like it didn't happen. Like that's all you gotta do. This Ward Manual thing it's like, oh my god, it gets goofier by the day with the story, that's for sure. But yeah, you got to think at some point those things catch up to you. I mean, yes, winning curves.
It's slowly turning the other way. I think you can only do that because I mean, how long was May there for 2 seasons and he's gone? I mean, I understand you got an NBA job, but there's more to it than just trying to get because you're going into Dallas ain't exactly primed for a title there. I mean, I know they got some young talent, but you're walking into you got San Antonio, freaking Oklahoma City is still not going away anytime soon. So it's not like he's gonna he's not gonna be 2 years in championship like he was at Michigan. So
yeah, seems a little shady, that's for sure. So that's kind of what we had on our docket here this week for you as far as topics. So we have, of course, there's plenty more going on, and then, like I said, a lot of more preview type stuff, and we're going to dive a little bit in that ourselves. I think you're coming up on the next few shows. We'll start talking about some of the games that we're excited about seeing here for this upcoming season. Maybe start talking about what we expect from some leagues, and we will still do some of that prognostication type stuff, even though it is getting more and more difficult by the season. But we'll have a little bit of fun with that, just because it's entertaining to do. And then before you know it, we'll be right into getting kickoffs and starting to make plays and picks for you once again, which will always be a good time. So we're looking forward to it. That's going to wind it down here for this week here for us. That's S.J. Munoz. I'm Chris Parks. Thanks for joining us for another round of Every Day We're Covering. We'll see you next time for some more covers.